So of all the great things that are happening at the Jamboree, there's some special hidden gems that you just got to see. So we decided to make this video for you so that if you missed it, you can see it. And if you didn't get a chance to come here, you'll learn a little more about the world of scouting. So believe it or not, we are forging a sword here, and it's called the Friendship Sword. And everybody who comes up to the Tartan Games, it's an opportunity to help forge it. Let's go learn more. Hey, Bill.
Hi.
Hi, Brian McCall here. How you doing?
See you, Brian.
I'd like to learn more about what you're doing and this great idea of a friendship sword. It's really getting the word out. People are hearing about it.
Good.
Tell us a little more.
Yeah, so our idea was to have a project that all the participants could interact in and be part of. And so we come up with this idea of having one sword that the entire world of scouting could participate in making. So that's what we're working on here.
How do we do it?
Yeah, so when I bring this red hot sword out, I'm going to lay it on the anvil. And you're going to tap on the edge. We're forming the beveled edges.
Okay.
You're going to tap on the edge. And then I'll tell you when to stop.
Okay.
So, you'll got your safeties on.
Safety's on, gloves on.
All right. All right, right there. Very good. All right.
How long will this take to make?
When we get home, it'll probably take us a few weeks to finish it up. And we'll use this blade for the final sword. And we'll make a new handle and card and
Well, thank you
get it
so
ready
much.
for
I'm
museum
10 on the fourth
presentation.
floor.
That'd be great.
Exclusion
Bill,
tent
wonderful
is
work.
next door.
Thank you for what you. So we saw a few moments ago of how a sword is being forged. There's some finished products here, crafted and just beautiful products to see. Let's take a look. Hi.
Hi.
How are you, Brian?
Good. Taylor.
Taylor, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So it's a wonderful display of implements that you've made here, and we really appreciate you bringing them to the Jamboree, World Jamboree. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have?
Yeah, so here we have a display on Highland arms and armor from the 12th to the 17th century. Fighting was a large part of Scottish culture, so we thought it would be great to represent all the different weapons and armor that they used throughout their history. Over here we have our chainmail and our leather armor. These were very effective against swords and arrows and knives. Over here, we have a Scottish backsword, a very early sword. It's heavy. It's a very difficult weapon to wield because it's so heavy. Here we have a Scottish claymore, very recognizable from movies and TV shows. It's a big two-handed sword, and was a devastating factor in a battlefield. Here we have what's called a skene-dhu, which is essentially the Scottish pocket knife. Now, kilts don't have pockets, so they would carry the skene-dhu in the top of their hose, so that they always had a knife available to use. Here we have probably the most elegant Scottish weapon. It's called a Scottish basket-hilted broadsword. The guard is fairly decorative, while still being heavy enough to be used as a weapon. This is similar to a rapier, but it's a little bit heavier, so you can use it for slicing and thrusting, unlike a rapier, which is just for thrusting. Right here we have a Scottish dirk. It's a short sword, or sometimes called a long knife. In battle, they were often used with a shield, and in times of peace, they were a very popular butcher's knife because it's heavy enough to stand up to battle, which means it's heavy enough to use as a butcher's knife. Over here we have a Scottish longbow. You might notice it's a little shorter than an English longbow, but due to constraints with the size and shape of trees in Scotland, they had to use a little bit less wood. And they're still very powerful, accurate to about 100 yards.
What kind of wood is that made out of?
This one is oak and maple. for durability. Right here we have some typical arrows. They feature a bodkin point, which was developed by the French, stolen by the English, and the English shot it at the Scots, so they ended up with a bunch of these points. Fairly simple design, and they were designed to be shot, and if you never see it again, no big loss. Before they used the bodkin point, they never used stone or any other metal. They just used a sharpened arrow. It was just a wooden arrow, which is different than many other cultures that often used steel or bronze, or stone or bronze before steel. Right here we have a series of pole arms. The iconic Scottish lockbar axe that features a hook that was often used to grab men off of horses in battle. Right here we have a battle axe that is based off the one. There's a statue of Robert the Bruce, who is famous for using a battle axe, and this one is based off of that statue. Here we have a spear, and spears were used in every culture, everywhere. The Scots didn't do anything particularly special with it, but they did use them, so we have it represented here. Right here is honestly the most terrifying thing I've ever built. It's called a brogget staff, which literally translates to spiked staff. It's pretty easy to see why. It's a wooden club with spikes on it. It's similar to a mace, but the Scots did not have as much access to steel, so they built the main body of it out of wood and added the steel to reinforce and to weaponize it. Right here we have a halberd, which is similar to the lockbar axe. It has a great big axe head. It has a spear tip, and the Scots also implemented the hook that you see on the lockbar axe in their later design while adding another blade.
It's very impressive. So, how many hours into one of these things is what does it take?
I honestly don't know how many hours. I can tell you that I've been working on putting this together for 6 years now.
Wow.
First for our 2017 National Jamboree, where we had about half of this, and then finishing the display for the World Jamboree.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So right next to the forge is a branding station where you can get your favorite item branded. Of course, I love my hats, so I'm going to get my hat branded with a logo from this World Jamboree. So let's take a look at what they're doing.
You want the bigger hammer? Yeah. There we go. Of course.
Well done.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Can you do the inside of a hat? Is that possible?
I've never looked a second. We haven't done one of these yet. Actually, I think I did one earlier. We've got some.
It should work if you got a light touch and a cooler
Let's put it
iron.
on this side, so just in case it's a problem, I don't end up.
Fair. I do my very best.
There goes nothing with my favorite hat.
Oh, no pressure. No pressure. On film, and it's his favorite hat.
One of my favorite hats. I'll take the stress off.
Nah. There you go. Nice.
Nice.
Oh my goodness, that looks great. That looks really great.
Yeah. So if you do light touches, light movements on a cooler iron,
That's great. Thank you very
you're
much.
welcome. Thank you very much.
We're here at the cultural tent at the Tartan Games, and Jonathan's going to tell us a little bit about the Grayton kilt.
Well, the kilt is the traditional garb of the Scottish people. What I'm wearing today is the modern, what's considered to be a modern kilt, modern being invented or coming about the late 18th century. Before the 18th century, a typical Scotsman would have to fashion his kilt instead of having an easy to put on a garment like this. Would have to fashion his kilt and his garment out of a cloth like this. Now, this would have typically been the only clothing that he had. So what I'm going to show you turns into a really versatile garment that served many purposes. The only difference is that we've got here, this cloth here is cotton. It would typically would have been woven out of heavy wool and woven into what we call a pattern or a tartan, which identified the family or the clan that with which he was associated. The other difference is that this typically would have been much larger as well, going further out that way and a little longer, and you'll see why in a few minutes. So, in order to start this off, and Brian, if you could come over here, a Scotsman would lay this out on the ground every single morning, get down, and start tugging or pulling in increments, forming what you'll see in the back of my kilt as pleats. But this all had to be done by hand. I'm going to ask you to stand right on the L and the T, turn around, and sit down right in the middle of the pleats there. So as your other kilt does, the kilt should fall between, the bottom of the kilt should fall right at mid-knee. So just make sure your knees are lined up properly. Yep, that looks good. Now, keep in mind you have to do this every morning. This is how you got dressed. Lie back. Okay, you're going to take that corner, flip that over yourself. Okay, and then you're going to take that corner and flip that over yourself again. Very good. So you've got a line right beneath you. You want to tie that and make sure that that's cinched tight, because again, remember, this probably was the only piece of clothing you had, so you didn't want it falling off. Okay, now you can stand up. And you can let this drape down. And, and there you have the great kilt. So you've got a few things here. I told you it was a versatile piece of clothing. Say that, just a few of the things. Say that you are a farmer and you were carrying your farm tools out to the field and you had an apple for lunch or something. Tuck in the corners, make yourself a little pouch to carry your lunch or other small things. Now if you look around back, you'll see the pleats that we made right here, and underneath you'll see the pleats from a better vantage point. But this here, I told you that this typically would have been a wider piece of cloth. Yeah. For someone your size, this top piece, you would have wanted it to be able to reach up around your shoulders, so that if you were cold, you could bring it around you. If it was raining, you could bring it up above your head. You could tug this out.
If it was wool, it would be water resistant too.
Hopefully.
That would be great, yeah.
Hopefully. You could tug this out and make yourself a sash across your shoulder and look like a real Highlander, and you'd be all set. So that's the great kilt.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's good. Let's go see what else we can find out in the cultural tent. So, when you think of culture, you can't help but identify music with that particular culture, and the Celtic culture certainly has a tremendous amount of music influence over the entire world, and we know that. And the instrument that we know most about this culture is the bagpipes. So Alex is going to hear from Australia, I understand.
Yeah.
Has come all the way from Australia to West Virginia to tell us about the music and the bagpipes.
Yes. Okay. So this is my set of bagpipes, and the name obviously comes from the fact that we have a bag and the pipes. Now these pipes up here, they're known as the drones, and they're the ones that make that humming, droning sound in the background when you hear bagpipes playing. We've got the bass drone here, which gives a really nice deep tone, and then we have the two tenor drones here to give a bit of a lighter tone as well. So combined, they make that lovely background noise when the bagpipes are playing. The tune comes from the chanter part of the bagpipes. So by moving my fingers, a lot like a lot of other wind instruments, I can get the tune from the bagpipes. And it's all just about the adjustment of the sound waves to make the different sounds. Now the bagpipes have a continuous flow of air, so the sound is always on. And the way to keep that going is with a lot of air. So I have a mouthpiece here. So I blow into the mouthpiece, I inflate the bag, and then I bring the bagpipes up ready to play. The drones start in first, and then when I'm ready, I start playing the tune. Now I need to keep that airflow going the whole time I'm playing, and I need to keep it steady. So to do that, I blow into the bag, inflate the bag, and then while I take a breath again, I use my arm to gently squeeze the bag to use the air that's inside the bag to keep the bagpipes playing. And then again, breath again, and repeating that over and over again. It takes a lot of practice to get that rhythm going and to keep the air pressure nice and steady. As soon as that air pressure is not steady, that's where the sound goes all over the place, and they don't sound quite so good. So that's how the bagpipes work. Now, the reeds in the bagpipes are a little different to some other instruments. Some are a little similar. This one here is the reed that's in the chanter, so the one that makes the beautiful tunes that I play. It's a double reed, so the two parts of the reed vibrate together to make the beautiful sound. And then inside the drones here, we have a slightly different reed. And in here, it's a single tongue reed, and the air travels in under the tongue, vibrates the tongue, which then travels down the drone to make that sound that you, as I said before, you hear in the background when bagpipes are playing. So the two tenors have a smaller, shorter reed, and the bass one is longer and slightly wider as well to give that deeper tone. So that's how the sounds are created when the bagpipes are played.
Wow. We'd love to hear some beautiful music.
Of course, no problem. Let's step outside and I will play you some tunes.
Great. Wow, wonderful. So there's a lot more going on in the cultural tent than you might think. There's language, there's sword games, of course you've seen the kilt and the bagpipes, and this is all put together in one concert by Laura Grant here, who's been able to tell us a little more about what we have here. Laura.
Thank you. The genesis of this tent came about with a couple of posters and a lady showing the great kilt as kids lined up to toss the caber in 2013. And our program director, John Campbell, said he'd really like to expand that. I take Scottish Gaelic lessons, and I said I'd be willing to undergo some study to figure out what I could do in this tent. So in 2017, we had one bagpiper and me. And there were some charts on the walls that I came up with that talked about the things we wanted to explain. The sword dance, how that was really for a young warrior to do, not just girls in competition as done today. I spoke the Gaelic language to them in a bit. Our welcome sign says Falcha, Higastai, welcome, come on in. And then I'd ask, Kemarahahu, how are you? I'd explain a bit about the Gaelic language, and then I would ask them if they spoke any Gaelic. And of course everyone says, no, I don't speak Gaelic. But we had a chart that showed all of the words in English that have come from the Gaelic. So they walked away with a sense of who we were as descendants of the Scottish people, why we were proud of our clans. We showed them some of our tartans and basically let them ask questions. One of the additions in the culture tent this year has been our bard. Kevin Maxon tells the story of why the flower of Scotland is the thistle.
So the Gaelic peoples have a very strong bardic tradition and pretty much had their entire entertainment wrapped around bards and storytelling. I'll tell you the story about the thistle. Now, I'm from the U.S., and our national flower is the rose. The national flower for Scotland, for that area, is the thistle, and I can tell you why. In the 13th century, there was, under Alexander III, who was the king of Scotland at the time, There was a king in Norway, King Haakon, and of course Scotland is beautiful then and it's beautiful now, and he wanted to take over the Scottish area for himself. So he sent a band of raiders to go get them. But he thought it would be easier if he could do it at nighttime and surprise them. So they crept in late one night, under cover of darkness, completely dark, and they wanted to be very quiet. So they crept in there and they were kind of rattling and so forth, and they had all their gear and their swords and armament, and they took off their shoes, and they thought, we'll be very, very quiet. Don't wake the clansmen. We'll surprise them, we'll kill them, and Scotland will be ours. And as they walked through, they walked on a bed of thistle. Now, I don't know if you have thistle where you are. This is a plastic version of thistle, but if you can believe it, actual thistles are even sharper and harder than this. They are so painful. I wouldn't do this to a real thistle because it would prick my fingers. But they walked on the thistle with their bare feet, and they went, ah! Ah! All the clansmen woke up. Who's out there? What's going on? The surprise was ruined. They beat the Norwegians back there, and to this day, the Scottish believe that the thistle saved their country. And that's the story of the thistle.
We're going to go see some of the Highland Games now. We're here at the caber toss, and Tom's going to go ahead and give us a demo, and at the same particular time, she'll have some participant scouts do some caber tossing. Let's see what happens.
It could be on the big screen for the closing ceremony. So the caber toss, has anyone done this before?
No.
Okay, the caber. Caber, it's a Scottish word for a long pole or a tree. The object of the caber toss is to make the caber flip over straight. It is not height, it is not distance. So the way you will do that is you will get the caber up on your shoulder, you will run forward, you will stop, you will drop down, and push it up in the air. So the physics of it, because you're running and then stop, the caber still has momentum and it's coming forward, and then you push up on the bottom and make it flip. So it is not height, not distance.
Okay.
This is the traditional Highland Games event. Where it came from, we're not quite sure. Maybe it was lumberjacks. They go cut down a tree, they have to cross a stream that they can't get across, so they flip the tree over. Maybe it was the Scots practicing attacking English castles and they wanted to try to get across the moat. Or maybe two Scotsmen had a wee bit too much to drink and one bet the other, I bet you can't flip that tree over. So for whatever, that's where it came from. So when you get to your caber, it will be on the ground. Come up and put your feet in a V, like this. We will hand you the caber. So save all your energy for throwing the caber, not picking it up. So when we hand you the caber, you want your feet together because if the caber slips, you don't want to hurt yourself picking up the caber. So once you get the caber, hold it. Spread your feet apart so you're nice and stable. Balance it against your shoulder. Come down to the bottom, squeeze it, and pick it up. Now you have to pull into your body right away because it will try to knock you over backwards. If it gets crazy and kind of goes, like this, push it away and we will start over. We don't want you to get hurt. So, way down at the bottom, pick it up. Now I'm going to run forward, I'm going to stop, I'm going to drop, and I'm going to pop it in the air. And if you will make a wee Scottish noise when you pop it in the air, it will go over better. So it'll look and sound like this.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Very good.
Comfortable shoulder. Okay. You want to space those feet out, shoulder length apart. You want to slide your hands all the way down and cup them underneath. There we go. There we go. Good job. Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, bring it close to your body. What you're going to do with it? You're going to run, stop, drop, and pop it out. You want to flip it one time. Okay? Good run. It does much better when you grunt. Yeah? Almost. You got all the basics here. The big thing is when you do that stop.
Hands on the shoulder, please. Yes. Okay.
Remember to keep it here while you're running. All right. Don't go like.
Remember to squat.
Yes, merci.
Now this must be a very ancient game because It's called stone toss, so you really don't need anything but a stone. And Sophie's going to tell us a little bit about it. Sophie, where are you from?
I'm from Denmark.
Denmark.
Yeah.
So she's come all the way from Denmark to show us how to throw a rock. So please tell us a little bit about it and then give us a demo.
Yeah, so it's one of the old Scottish games that they play. It's like shot putting, but you use a stone instead of like a metal ball. And there's really not that much into it. It's just about the technique, really. Yeah.
Alright, so the one I selected says, this one is just a rock.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Shiftos. This is a very typical Scottish game. The purpose is to throw this pillow with this fork over those lines, and you have to put the fork in the pillow, then you have to first swing the fork and then push the pillow upwards next to your shoulder. I can give you a demonstration. Okay, so you stand more or less here. Yeah, that's all.
Well done. We're at another Highland game, weight for distance, and Archie here's going to tell us all about it. Okay. Archie, where are you from?
I'm from Kent in the UK.
Oh.
I've got Scottish roots, which is why I've really enjoyed doing the Highland Games here. What we have here is the weight for distance. Weight for distance is the ancient precursor to the other sport across from us, which is the which is the hammer throw. We've been demoing it here. We've seen Scats having lots of fun, and we look forward to having it in future events.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Matt Thompson. I'm running here the hammer throw, which is a very traditional Scottish Highlands event. Okay, so I'll show you how it's done. So, when you throw the hammer, you've got to make sure you're standing nice and still, with your feet nice and wide apart. Okay, unlike the Olympics, your feet don't move in this. Pick up the hammer, you've got to put it in your non-dominant hand. You start down at your hip, up to your shoulder, round behind your head. It's important to get it nice and fast. It goes faster, it goes further. When you throw, you turn and take a step and throw out over your shoulder. And the most important thing in this event is that you've got to make a really loud shout when you throw. It makes it go further, okay? So, I'm going to show you all how it's done. Like so.